warning at the start of the podcast. This week's episode, we discuss some things that other listeners may find quite distressing. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of That's Mental Mate with me, Brad. I'm joined today with Josephine Mcateer. She's suffered some grief in her life and she's turned it into positives by starting a charity and wanting to show other people kindness and give them some support where she might not have. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Josephine Mcateer and I'm a survivor of prevention of suicide.
So we start every episode, Josephine, asking the guest how they are.
Well, today I'm good.
How about other days?
Other days, it's like, I always say, life's like a roller coaster. It's the ups and downs and you just go with the flow. But I do have my bad days as well. And I think not every day is a good day.
Yeah. So do you want to maybe talk to us a wee bit, give us a wee bit of background as to why you started the charity?
Well, my son Gerard, he took his own life in 2003, 19 years ago. And there was no support in Downpatrick. There was very little support all over, to be truthful. And I find this quite upsetting. So I went through my grief, went through my pain. And then one day I thought, well, I know what I went through. And I'm sure there's many going through it as well. So I decided to turn my pain into helping others, to help them to survive. So I decided then I would set up a group called PIPS, Prevention of Suicide, in Downpatrick. And after George's death, say about 3 years, I started on a one-to-one with people. And then it went from there to groups. And then it went back to one-to-ones because some people prefer the one-to-ones as they were in their own home, their own comfort. And then they could have went and got the photograph of their loved ones and showed it to you. So we had the two different groups. The group that met once a month and then the one-to-ones in between. So that ran for 14 years and it expanded. So it did. And we were able to bring in counsellors. I trained myself in mindfulness to go into schools to teach the children at a young age. I went in and done meditation classes for people who were stressed. I was connected with PIPS as well. I trained in that. And it just kept growing and growing and more people were coming in and giving us support. Now, we never had grant support. It was always based on our community for fundraising. And I have to say the support was absolutely mind-blowing for the support we received, and we were able to put now the classes for meditation was free, the mindfulness was free to the schools, so the money that we brought in from the community went back out to the community. So it went on, and then our people joined me, and my son Patrick and daughter Brenda and Katrina. And they came in and they were supporting me and helping me for the fundraisers and doing different groups as well. Patrick, being the male, was able to talk one-to-one with males. So it rolled into a big supporting for the community, not only inside Downpatrick, but it stretched to Newcastle, Crossgar, Arglass, and it just kept stretching out. Where it came to the point, it got too much for the family to keep it going. Then the doctor's surgery, they were putting in mental health students and people in their surgery. So then when they were going for help, they were referring them to PIPS in Downpatrick. So it got that big. We had to contact the doctors to say, look, they have to come in and refer themselves as one-to-one. And then unfortunately it got that much, it had to close up. There wasn't enough manpower to keep it going. So that was very heartbreaking for myself. It was grief all over again, losing, the group going. I felt I let Jared down then as well. So it took me down another path of grieving. It took me about a year to come to terms with that, So that was about me up to date.
And have you any future plans for it to bring it back? Or do you find anything that's quite similar that you could signpost people to?
Well, I do signpost people to other groups in Downpatrick, like Pop Up Art. Very good. It's a place that's the Market Street, and they use artwork, and they tune and knitting, and they use that all as a therapy. So, and then there's a wee cafe in it as well. So I would refer people to there. So then I went from there and I set up a page called Josie's Wellbeing on Facebook. So I use that as my dashboard every day. I put up about 4 to 5 posts on it, all to do with self-care, mental health, looking after yourself, stress. I put wee tools on to help them. And then on a Friday, every Friday there's a meditation put on just to help people to relax, and a few wee tips just to how to relax the body, do the deep breathing, and I would put up different wee ways to help them to go to sleep. And I encourage them ever so much is to talk, that it's okay to talk. And I cover men and women. It's just not all women. And I do feel that I'm helping a lot of people there as well. Well, I've 700 follows, so somebody's getting something from it. And that's the way I look at it. I've still people who have made great friends with who would phone and ask, would I still, would I do like a wee therapy with them, or would I meet them for coffee for a one-to-one? I would still do that as well. Now, I'm not over inundated with it, but them that asked, I wouldn't refuse them.
That's still really good though that you're still getting out there into the community and you're still putting yourself out there and giving back.
Yeah. So I also on a Friday morning I do a good morning down call. I do that. That's a voluntary work as well, and it's getting in contact with the elderly who live in their own, just checking in with everything with them is okay as well, which I find is very rewarding also for me and for them. So I like
And
to keep my hand in.
yeah, seems like you definitely do. Whenever you were more active in the community, did you find any common threads that everyone was kind of dealing with? Or do you think everyone was kind of individual in their experiences and their trauma, that kind of thing?
Well, no case was ever the same. Everybody was, well, you could link it up with people with trauma and depression and worry problems and stuff like that. But every person's story was different. A lot of people had grieved themselves, especially the mums and dads who lost their children through suicide. And when somebody takes their life by suicide, it just doesn't affect the family, it affects the whole community. And it's sort of trying to bring that hope back in the community that there is a place here where you can reach out for help and support. And that's where we built ours on. It's always good to talk. We even had set up where they could go to the gym, maybe just physically work it off. Some people like to walk it off. Everybody's story was different, and every tool that you offered, maybe the person that didn't suit them, but you come up with another one that did suit them. And again, what always struck me was the whole time that I done the work out in the community was how many people were ashamed to say that their son took their own life. So that we had to deal with the stigma of it as well and try and put it out there. It was their choice. I know this sounds very hard, but this is when I came to accept it was his choice to do it. Now, this I'm talking about after 3 years of Jared's death and me coming to terms with it. But that was my turning point for me, that it was Jared's choice to take his own life, and I accepted it. Now, it wasn't easy, but when you tell that to a person and you it clicks with them. Unfortunately, some people can't accept it, but that's their choice as well. Every person goes down the grief line with different grief. There's no two griefs the same either. And there's no point of saying 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 months, you're going to get over this. They don't get over it, but you give them strategies to learn them to live with the pain. And as time goes on, the pain does ease, but you've always that wee piece of jigsaw missing that'll never be, put in together again. So it's the strategies, but every person's different, everybody's mind's different, and their stories were all different. So you were dealing with individuals, say one person, you referred them to a counsellor. They could have been at the counsellor. You got 2 blocks of 6. So some people may have been okay after the 6, some needed the 12, some might have needed the 18. So it went on that they felt that they were secure in their own environment and their own mind. And then it was always left open. If you need help again, it's there. We're here for you, so feeling them that they weren't left alone. And then again, we would have done maybe a wee random call just to check in to see how things were going. They were never left alone to deal with it.
I think a common misconception with families and friends of people that take their own lives is the guilt. What would you? I've spoke to people before on the podcast and in everyday life where they felt like they could have done more. What would you have said to them? And I suppose I could ask, did you feel that yourself as well?
Of course, you feel the guilt. That's to me, and talking to my own experience here and talking to the people that I had the pleasure of meeting throughout this journey that I went on, is to me guilt's the very first sign of grief, because you've that guilt. For instance, Jared phoned me at night at 9 o'clock and says, "Mom, I'm on top of the world." So when you're listening to your son saying, "I'm on top of the world," your first reaction is, he's in a good place. Now, that was my reaction to that. And by 1 o'clock, by the next morning, I received, it was my partner came to where I worked and told me Jared had taken his own life. So I was thinking to myself, well, he told me he was on top of the world beforehand. Did I not get the message? Was I not listening to it? I could have done more for him. I should have been there for him. I should have listened to him. I should have took him for more help. And I go back where Jared's case is concerned about Jared taking his own life, was his trauma would go back. I would say Jared was a child of the Troubles in the 80s, forgot about. Because my dad was shot dead in the Troubles in 79. And I fell pregnant with Jared, and Jared was born in the 80s. So to me, what I was carrying, it was passed on to Jared. So I felt guilty about that. But no matter what, and I would say this to people I was working with and on this journey, was no matter what we tried to do, to me, they had it planned. And if they have planned to go ahead and take their life, nothing's going to stop them. Now you have people taking their own lives and leaving messages and being found. And to me, that is a cry for help. And to get the help, that is absolutely fantastic. But to me, after Jared had taken his own life and months down the line, and people were stopping me and saying, Jared came into the cafe today and thanked me for serving him each time he came in, and he was sort of happy looking. And then other people would stop me and say he was thanking them for things that happened in the past. So you try and build this picture up, what was going on. And to me, Jared taking his own life was a part of what he was doing. He was thanking people before he was going. And that's not every case. Don't get me wrong, it's not every case. But that's what I got out of mine. Guilt is a big part of it. And I would say to people, you ask your question yourselves and you don't sleep. What if? That's another big one on it. If I had done this, if I should have done this, But it's a part of your grieving. And time does, you start to deal with it,
And you said Jared was a child of the Troubles. Did he always kind of have a mental health problems, or?
Jared wasn't. No, he wasn't what I call the child of troubles left behind. Jared was born in the 80s, so it was, the Troubles was just going over then. Not in the 80s, they weren't going over, but what I'm saying is, when I was carrying Jared, I take it the grief I was going through for my daddy, because he was killed instead of 79, must have been passed on generations down to Jared. But Jared did have mental health issues. He did. And I had him at different counsellors and different hospitals and things. And he was just a lovely soul. And I always say that to everybody, and when they look at their childhood, they are beautiful souls. And he had just had his demons, and mental health I call demons, that he was trying to cope with what was going on in his life, which he found very hard, unfortunately. And again, the support there is completely different. When you think back on it, then, like, you go back 19 years ago, nearly 20, coming into March again, there's very little change mental health out there as well. Like, there's a bit of a change, but not much going back then. There was nothing then, and there was nothing to support the ones who were suffering depression or anxieties, and there was certainly nothing for the parents of children who did take their own life. There was no support there at all. And it was then people on the ground, like PIPs started off in Ardoyne, spread it to Newcastle, Ballyhinch, and then Downpatrick and Newry. So their branches, 3 of them branches are still running till today.
But do you feel like you said that in 20 years you don't think that a lot has changed in terms of mental health services? But do you feel like everyday people's attitudes have changed towards mental health in that time?
Well, people on the ground's attitude has changed on it. People are recognising that they're suffering from depression, and they're opening up more till asking for help and asking for support, or even talking it out with a good friend. You see a lot of advertisements on television, especially one where he rips off the mask. That's all well and good advertising that, but it has to be put into practice. I've many people that would phone me and say they went to their GP and asked for help and support. And the GP says, a big man like you, go and catch yourself on. Like, so you tell somebody that's sitting facing you, who's ready at their wit ends, it doesn't do them any good. It does them more damage, little do they know. So I thought, going back then, for doctors to be more educated on people with that bad of depression, that they're ready to take their own life. And many a times too, we had to sit in hospitals with ones who were going to take their own lives, and they were treated very unfairly. They were put to the back of the line, and that's why we ended up getting in sitting with them. They were left sitting in the waiting room with other people, and with somebody who's suffering from anxiety and depression sitting in a room, say there's children crying, there's talking going on, it's not the ideal place environment for them. They need that when they go to the hospital, there should be a separate room for them to sit in till they're seen. That hasn't changed much either, unfortunately. But I hear all these advertisements on the radio and mental health. Now, a lot of people on the ground again is doing walks for mental health, and they're opening gyms for mental health, which is absolutely fabulous. But it goes back to the government at the end of the day. They need to pour more money in till the mental health and open units for people to be treated in the proper manner that they deserve.
And whenever you first started your charity, and you said that it progressed and you got counsellors in, and you said that you weren't taking any money from anyone, how were you paying the counsellors? Were they doing it for free? How did you manage the business with very little income?
Well, as I said earlier, when the community was a great support, so we had people on the ground again. They would do charity walks. There would be bands coming, approaching you, saying we're putting on gigs. So that gave us the money to bring in one counsellor. Then the counsellor wouldn't charge full amount. They would have done half of the amount of pay because of what it was needed. And we had the Lions Club in Downpatrick too that done great charity work and donated the money to PIPs. So as the money came in, we were able then to get a second counsellor who again done half price for us. And then I trained mindfulness for children, meditation classes, counsellor classes, and my daughter done the same. So we would put the classes on free. My son has done the physical gym, so they've got their membership there free as well. So what money came in went straight out again, back into the community for support the ones that needed it. And to this day, we still would get people phoning and thanking us and calling us their little, we were their little starfish. We saved their lives. And we had an artist who done 3 paintings for us. And he'd done a beautiful one of the lighthouse because that was Pip's slogan. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. And he done me a beautiful painting with the lighthouse and him dropping the little starfish into the water because he said we saved his life. So you still get calls like after the day. People saying I wouldn't be here today only for you. So to me, that's still a good feedback for the work that we did in the community.
And do you not think that would make Jared proud?
Yeah, it definitely would. It definitely would. But again, the loss of it was like a loss to me. I wanted to go on forever. I wanted this to continue forever, but the manpower wasn't there, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't continue it on my own. And I know my daughter and son, and they had their own family, and they were starting to where they were needed, and that's very understandable. And there just wasn't the manpower to keep it going on my own, So again, I had to deal with that. I had to go down that road again of it was like a grief, how much I lost it. I felt a bit down, depressed, as I say, like I felt I let Jared down. But today I can look at it from a different side. I'd say Jared is very proud of me, and people would stop you and say, you've done 14 years, you've done more than enough. So just it's your time to do what you need to do.
But for you to have very little income in today's society as well, with the current cost of living and that kind of thing, for how much 14 years is really, really good. I would agree with that.
Yeah, it definitely is. But one thing that came out of this too was, well, everybody remembers lockdown, but our phones was always quite busy. Maybe you get 4 or 5 calls a day. We all took turns to pieces of doing the phones and taking the information and then passing it on to the counsellors. But you see, during during lockdown, our phones went very quiet. People wondering what's going on in society. But then when we had the meeting and broke it down, people weren't under the stress that they were under in everyday life before lockdown. Because you had people that weren't under the pressure of getting up, getting the kids out of school, getting them to work, doing what they needed to do. It was like if everybody was on a break, time out. And that the phone continued like that for a good maybe couple of months, which it goes to show you when society does slow down, it takes some of the pressure and the anxiety of the community. Now, unfortunately, today, the suicide rate's way up again. As far as I know, it definitely is way up again.
I
But
would have thought it would have been the opposite in lockdown. I thought people would
it would
have.
have been the opposite. Yeah. Well, that's we were sort of prepared for incoming calls, and it just went the complete opposite way. But to me, people were more relaxed, hadn't got the pressure we're under. There was so much that they were able to cut out of their life that it wasn't putting them under pressure. And they were able to rest more, they were able to do things with the family. And there wasn't that go, 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 do you hit that brick wall? That's my personal opinion on it.
And you said that whenever you decided to close the charity, it was like another grief all over again. But did
Yeah.
you feel like you had the tools to cope with that because of how much training you'd done yourself. You could understand the emotions you were going through.
Yeah, yeah. But I still had to go through the emotions. I couldn't bury them. I still had to go through them, even though I taught, I still do. Like I done Indian head massages, I done reggae, I done deep massages, any treatment that would help somebody to relax the muscles in the mind, I did it. So I had them all for myself as well. But when you're going through emotion of loss, you must go through the emotions, recognize the emotions, deal with the emotions, and then do your best to start coming back up again through the bubbles into reality again. And then the best, I ended up finished writing a piece on when Pips closed down. And I wrote it out and read it back to myself. Then I seen it in a different light then. I even at one stage resented the people that didn't help me to continue to carry it on. But then when I was clear minded myself and come up, as I say, through the bubbles again, I realised they had their own lives to live. They had the responsibilities of their children, their jobs, and it was starting to put the pressure on them. And if you're under pressure, you're no good to nobody. So I seen the bigger picture then.
If anyone who's listening to this would like to actually start something like this up, what advice would you give them to start out?
Well, to me, and I've always said this to people, and I've said this to doctors, and I've said this to MPs, and do you see, if you go through what I went through with George and what I experienced with George and what I experienced with myself, and if you're in the same situation, it doesn't have to be suicide. It can be depression, it can be anxiety, it could be stress, it could be panic attacks. If you have experienced it, you can set up a group and carry it out. And then the people who say need A, B, or C group, you join that group. You don't have to work yourself to the bone to keep it going. You ask for help and support as well. You start up charities and you ask for, you don't have to go out to do the work for charities. People do it for you. So it's that support you have as well. But my point of putting over to you is, if you've experienced it, you didn't get this out of a book. You're not telling people things that you read in a book. You experienced it. You share your experience of what you went through, and when you came to the end of the tunnel, how you started them back up again. And when you share that with somebody else, it makes a quite a difference to the other person. So that person can start up that group, and anybody does it, I admire them, because it's a powerful step to take. But I started this out on my own. I hadn't a penny. The school I worked in let me use a photocopier to do the posters. I got rooms hired out. They didn't charge me the money because of what it was for. And I done it on my own for about roughly a year, and doing one-to-ones. When the meeting, then I went out and done the one-to-ones. But my advice is, talk from the heart, and if you experienced it, you're experienced enough to start up a group. Should it be men and women or mixture? But I would love, my dream would be to see more men opening up and sharing and talking about their feelings and their emotions. That's my dream.
That's all our dreams.
They're getting there. They're getting there, and there's a lot more men opening up and sharing, which is good to see. It does my heart good, but I'd love to see more do it, because there's help out there for them. They don't have to do it on their own. And the same with anybody who's suffering mental health. There's help out there on the ground. And if you get a good doctor, then that's an hour bonus. One that understands.
And do you feel like one-to-ones or groups have different benefits and different negatives, or do you feel like one kind of overlaps the other? What one's more, what more people have found one more beneficial?
Well, I'll do the groups first. When you have a group and you have parents in the group and they're grieving for their loved ones. So say you have a person in the group, say they're in it for 5 months and they're starting to, cope with their pain and they know all these tools to deal with it. And then you have a person coming into the group who's just maybe 6 weeks down the road and they share their story. So that knocks the person at 5 weeks, takes them back into the beginning of their story again. So groups can be good in one way, and in other ways they can do damage. Now, the one-to-one is you would go to their home or you'd meet them in a cafe. It's their choice what they want. And I always found when you were in their home, their environment, they opened up more. And then they would go and get the photograph of their loved ones and they would bring it in and show you. So you also get a visualize of what this parent's talking to you about. You can see the child, you're looking at the photograph. So when you can see the pain in the mother's face, but then she holds it close to her heart and you can understand what she's doing. But again, then you have a wee cup of tea with them and a wee biscuits, and then the chat changes to different wee situations about how they get on with their day, how did they sleep. So a private one-to-one is to me, it worked better than groups. That's my opinion. It worked better than groups. Groups can be good if everybody's on the same level, the same stage of grief, because grief is all different levels. And when you're grieving, you'll not get two people in the room that's grieving at the same time at that level.
So at the end of every podcast, I ask every guest, whenever they're feeling down, or if you just don't want to get out of bed or you're having a really bad day, what is your advice to someone that makes you feel better and makes you come out of yourself and bring yourself back out of it?
For me personally?
Yeah.
For me personally, you have to have something to focus on what you want to get up for. It should be, you want to get up to go to work, or sometimes, I might be breaking away here, but sometimes you're entitled to have a bad day. Some people do have a bad day, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a bad life for them. So what I focus, for me, the best tool I always use is a walk in the fresh air. If I'm feeling a bit down, I would get up and hop myself up. Should it be raining, put water boots on, and I'd go out in the fresh air, take big deep breaths, fill my lungs full of fresh air, and walk and just admire everything that's around me. Should it be the trees, the sea, the leaves on the ground, the colour of the clouds, the sky. So when you're out walking, you're actually doing meditation while you walk because you're noticing other things. And when you're focusing on the trees or the leaves or what is it, then you're taking your mind away from what's going on. I always say when somebody goes through depression and anxiety, I call it the CD mind because it keeps spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. You have to stop it. And only you can stop that by changing your thoughts. Go into mindfulness, deep breathing, pause throughout the day if you think it's getting too much. Take a deep breath, maybe 2 or 3, and then kick in again. And face your emotions. Your emotions is a way of telling you there's something wrong with the body. Face them and work with them, and you work your way through them. But for my tool is writing. I love writing. I would do journaling, write it out, read it back, and then I can see what's in front of me and I can see where the problem's coming from, and then I do something about it.
That's very interesting. I ask every guest that, and every answer is completely different.
Yeah, I say it would be that. As I say, that works for me. It might not work for somebody else, but see if you find the right tool to work with. Should be painting, singing, dancing. There's always a tool there that'll get you through, but we have to find it, and you do find it. And the best way to find it is quieting the mind. When we're quieting the mind, it's a lot more easier. But for a CD mind, what I call it, it spins. For some people, it's hard to come off it. And this is where they need to talk. This is where the talking comes in and sharing their feelings and their emotions.
And can I ask you another question as well that I don't ask every guest? Obviously, you've gone through a lot, and if there's someone, parent or a brother or a friend, someone that is experiencing this grief, what advice would you give them?
What I would say, I would, one, they're not alone. They're not in it alone. And two, there is help on the ground and through your GP. But my biggest would say to them, don't suffer it alone. Don't keep it in. Go through your grieving stages, because you're going to have your grieving, you're angry, you're frustrated, the whats and the ifs. Go through that and you will come out the other end. Unfortunately, some people don't. And I have to be honest. And unfortunately, some people don't come out of the grief because they just have a broken heart. And I would just say, talk about them. They're a person. Some people, when they think because they die, I'm talking about my own experience here as well. And when I was sitting at the table and my rest of my family's around the table, they'd never mentioned George's name. I used to think, are they not talking about George? And then one day I asked a question and he says, well, Mum, we were afraid to bring his name up in case we upset you. So you have that as well. And then every family in that home was going through a different grievement. Every one of my children went through a different grievement from what I went through and what his brother went through and his sister went through. So talk about them, use their name and think of all the beautiful memories you had with them before they left this world. The time when they were first born, their first steps, their first smile, that keeps people going. And just to love them the same way. I done a couple of wee things on Josie's well-being for grief and about, if you just put your hand in your heart and tip it and just say, I know you're in there and I love you. And that is a great feeling for any parent to know that they're in their heart and they'll always be there with the love. And that's what I'd say to them. Keep loving them. Even though they're not here, keep loving them and keep talking about them. Keep using their name and you will get through it. But talk to family members, talk to a good friend, talk to a counsellor, learn how to relax the body and the mind, go to yoga. There's so much out there at the minute now too for relaxations as well and apps.
That's great. Thank you very much. I can see that you're got quite upset there a couple of times, so I appreciate you talking to me and taking the time out to give advice to someone that could be going through something that's similar as yourself.
Yeah. It still does. You still have that I describe grief, and this is mine, and I know I've heard many stories but for me, grief is like one big massive, it's like the sea. 1 minute it's nice and calm, and the next thing a big wave comes up and hits you in the face and knocks you down. And to me, that's why I describe grief, because you could be sailing along the road fine, and the next minute a big wave hits you and you have all these emotions coming up again, the sadness, the missing them, the loneliness. So that's the way I describe grief, just like the sea, calm and then rough.
Thank you very much for taking your time out to talk to me today. I think it was a very nice chat.
Thank you very much for the interview. But you're doing a great job, and it's great to see it on Facebook too. And I will be sharing it with others as well. Well, I have told a few people to listen in, and I'm so delighted that you're doing it.
Thank you very much.
So delighted to see you're doing it.
Anyone negatively affected by this week's episode, there are a number of links in the bio to help. That's all from me. I will see you next week on That's Mental Mate.